What if I told you that this AI shot was from a Christian TV series? And what if I also told you that a team of over 80 visual effects artists were involved in the creation of it? We've been told that AI is evil, when in fact, AI needs the artist in order to survive. Without the soul of the artist, AI is incapable of rendering anything of merit, if anything at all. When I first saw episode 6 of House of David, I was astonished to see that AI was used. But this wasn't the slop of the general masses. This was a highly intentional piece of art incorporated into an epic story about David. Contrary to what we've been told as Christians, this show needed artists to make the AI work. They didn't type some words into ChatGPT, grab a coffee, and come back 10 minutes later with an epic sequence about the fallen angels. We've been told that AI is lazy, theft, and corrupts the very process of making art. But there's a crucial piece that we're missing. Generative AI is kind of like an iceberg. On the top are surface level concerns, but as we dig deeper, the arguments against AI become its greatest support. So let's dig into how a small studio used generative AI to make the hit TV series House of David and the biblical arguments in favor of it. Artists have never had to deal with generative AI before, and this is an unprecedented issue. I actually agree with a few of the objections, but the difference is that I have come to a hopeful and nuanced conclusion. This video is not arguing for AI music or tackling the issue of AI pornography. I'm specifically attacking the topic of generative AI from the perspective of a Christian filmmaker. I sent out a community post about generative AI, and one person claimed it throws stolen work in a blender and pours out sludge. Without any further investigation, it's easy to make this claim, but here's how the most common generative AI models actually work. In plain English, it simply takes a reference image and fills it with noise until it's a completely noisy image. From there, you ask it to make whatever you want, and it gradually removes the noise until it has something. AI does not keep data banks of the images it learned from. If this was the case, the storage of these models would be hundreds of terabytes, but in reality they only store statistical parameters, not copies of the images. This was the court ruling in the case Getty versus Stability in November 2025.
These AI image generators diffuse reference images into essentially noise to detect patterns for various objects, so that, for instance, when you tell it to make an apple, it looks through millions of these diffused data sets of apple and tries to figure out what the correct contours, colors, and textures are for that specific object.
Putting aside the fact that AI doesn't actually copy anything, people may still have issues with models using reference images from artists. But what happens when the artist consents? Is AI still immoral to use? One artist on Twitter made a post welcoming artists to train a model on his work, for which he received enormous backlash. So the real problem seems like a moral one, but both sides of the aisle are seeing in black and white. In reality, there are creative solutions to these problems. Furthermore, veteran artists such as Aaron Blaise see this as a tool rather than a replacement for artists. He worked with Disney for 21 years and yet sees AI having similar potential like what they did in their 2D films such as Beauty and the Beast or Aladdin. The process is simply higher tech. There are some murky waters about how these models source their training, but not all models are created equal. Nano Banana, created by Google, uses their own licensed material. Additionally, Runway recently got the rights to Lionsgate materials, so you don't have to only use AI or discard it. In House of David, John Irwin and his small team used a cooperation of generative AI and traditional filmmaking. They weren't simply putting random prompts in a blender and hoping AI gave them a good result. The mechanism that AI uses to generate images isn't the real problem. And if you have an issue with the mainstream models, there are alternatives that only use licensed or commissioned content to train them. The real issue isn't about theft, but the creative process of art itself. This video is sponsored by me. If you're finding value in this, check out my monthly Insights newsletter. Each month I share a film I watched, explore the themes behind it, and give a practical takeaway for your storytelling. You also get my film tier list doc that I update whenever I watch a new film. Link in the pinned comment. Back to the story. Now there's a legitimate concern that all of this raises. Does AI take the joy out of the art? The concern is that if we lose the struggle of creation, we lose our integrity. There's a mistaken notion that artists are worth their value because of the effort they put into their art. However, a novice painter may put hours or even days into their art, yet we do not congratulate him simply because he spent hours laboring over a mediocre piece.
Are these your paintings? What a majestic mountain range.
It's an old woman in a hat.
Right. Yeah, there's the hat.
That's her eyes.
Yes, and that's her chin.
It's her foot.
However, a veteran artist such as Rembrandt could easily sketch a masterpiece within a matter of minutes. When it comes to art, effort is not the defining factor. It's a variable, sure, but what matters in the end is that this process of effort concluded in something objectively beautiful and artistic. As Christians, we serve a God of beauty, and he has a standard for beauty. However, I'm not going to whitewash this real concern with a simple statement. I've been a classical musician and filmmaker for over 12 years combined, so I understand that the process of creation is a valid part of the journey. Let me first address the issue of artists losing jobs. There are some whose livelihoods are indeed being challenged, but the truth is actually a lot more hopeful. In an interview, John Irwin said, "If you can make things quicker and you can make things at a price point that studios will say yes, you can employ more people in aggregate and create jobs." Historically, every new piece of technology has impacted people who, at the time, were part of the foundation of society. When the loom was invented, it displaced hand-weaving craftsmen, but they didn't go away, they adapted. Their work became even more valued because of the loom. Every new technology stands on the shoulders of the ones before it. AI simply lowers the opportunity cost of making art. That's why indie artists like John Irwin can make a biblical TV epic that utilizes AI and still maintains his artistic integrity. Indie-level filmmakers who have been gifted a divine vision now have access to Hollywood-level tools. Think of your favorite movies. They were made by directors and filmmakers who have this God-given creativity. Because we are made in the image of the God of vision and creativity, we mirror him in those aspects. Because of this, I'd define a true creative person as someone who is the originator, the creator of their vision. AI can execute on an idea, but it cannot originate them. The movies you cherish are all purposeful and point to greater truths. This is why you remember scenes from The Lord of the Rings years after watching them.
I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you. Come on!
The process of creating art makes art of you. The most important change made by an artistic endeavor is the change it makes in you.
This is an argument Brandon Sanderson makes against AI, but ironically, it's one of the best cases for it. Making art makes a change in you, and AI doesn't sacrifice that. You are specifically directing the AI with what choices to make. With House of David, the team of over 80 visual effects artists didn't sacrifice the process of their art. Without AI, over 70 shots in the first season wouldn't exist, and we wouldn't have gotten the incredible backstory of the Nephilim in episode 6. John Irwin and his indie studio used AI to create a sequence that otherwise would have been impossible due to budget and time constraints. AI filled the gap and real artists were involved. AI enabled the vision of these artists to come to life. Let's apply this concern to myself as a filmmaker. You might say using AI to do the visual effects would take away the satisfaction of having made the finished product. However, for me, the joy and the discovery process live in the storytelling and cinematography, the parts that I actually love. I want AI to do the metaphorical taxes of my film so I can focus on what I excel at. It closes the gap between what I can envision and what I can afford to make. It lets me create the art I actually pictured as an indie artist, but it doesn't initiate or write the idea on my behalf. As I mentioned before, writing is the process I enjoy. AI cannot replace the essence of storytelling since it isn't human. Part of the fear of generative AI is that we're losing the artistic process, the fundamentals, the sacrifice of time and energy that goes into creating something beautiful. But I hope you can see that in the previous examples I've given, the artists didn't compromise any of that. In fact, sometimes it took greater effort. Let me share with you Austin McConnell. He made a 50-minute visual book and used AI to assist in many of the scenes. He received tons of backlash once he released it, comments flooding in with disgust and horror, asking why he would be so lazy. But that wasn't the case at all. What they had assumed took a couple of hours actually took over 5 months to write and produce, even with AI. As an indie creator, he didn't have the budget to pay thousands of dollars, so he used both AI and traditional methods to achieve the previously unachievable. Imagine what is now possible for indie creators. Imagine what is now possible for Christian indie creators who are dedicated to their craft. Let's take this a step further. If effort is what defines art, what non-arbitrary factor should we attribute to it? A director is not an artist because they spend hours poring over a canvas, but because they are the director of the creative vision. Every film they make bears their fingerprint because they used a team of people as the catalyst to make it a reality, even though they didn't physically do many things such as set design, lighting, or the actual camera work. If we are to be consistent, we must apply the same logic to a tool such as generative AI. As an indie filmmaker, I don't have thousands of expendable income for visual effects, and having a production studio doesn't magically make everything more affordable. Visual effects can cost up to hundreds of thousands of dollars for a big screen production. Remember the opening shot I showed you? It took human writing, human directing, and human creativity to design that sequence. AI didn't come up with the script or the cinematography or the concept. Humans did. It's important to note that John Irwin specifically mentions that he used a blend of AI and traditional filmmaking to achieve this. We don't need to throw out the baby with the bathwater, and I personally think that this is an excellent compromise. They filmed a real location with real actors and had real artists use AI to extend the set and add armies to scale. Throughout scripture, the Bible mentions the Philistine armies as numerous as grains of sand. This would be challenging with traditional visual effects. But in collaboration with AI tools, the impossible becomes achievable. The Christians treating the use of AI in art as evil mean well, but they've built their moral case on assumptions of how AI is used. Let's also not conflate the amateur attempts of the general masses with what AI is truly capable of under the eyes of a master artist. An artist who has truly dedicated time to their craft would reach an entirely new level of mastery compared to the wannabe artists who spend their time scrolling social media. This is a monumental time in which we live. The cost of casting aside AI based on misunderstandings doesn't just affect you, it's cultural. It encourages division and relinquishes the most consequential technology of this generation to people who don't share our Christian values. We have the potential to use AI for a far more godly and greater purpose, yet to cast it aside would be the easy way out. Evil people have filled every creative space that Christians have run from, and AI is next if we don't take advantage of it. The struggle of creating art is a part of the process, but it is not the only variable. What's important is the authorship of the art. I would consider neither books or music written by AI as art, but a book written by a human and proofread by AI, there's no moral issue there. Or how about this? A human artist that uses realistic AI instruments to write his music. He composed it, but AI made it more affordable. The struggle that forms the artist was never skipped. AI simply assists the process. Now, the sourcing is a genuine question, but federal courts still have not come to a verdict, and until we learn more, we can't keep whitewashing everything based on limited information. But perhaps the strongest argument against AI is this: AI has no soul, so anything it creates is inherently soulless. Comments like this gave me pause when I first read them. Tolkien said we are sub-creators with God. As such, we must steward our talents wisely. I agree with this. And this is actually the biggest argument for AI. Exodus 31 describes workers being filled with the Spirit of God in the knowledge of artistry and craftsmanship. God has specifically filled us with a desire not only to fulfill the process of artistic work, but the act of designing the vision itself. Using AI does not take away the visionary eye, but rather gives us room to execute the vision in a way never before imagined. God doesn't merely judge the process of creating art, but the vision of the one behind it. One commenter says in response to AI, "Creative vision without a creator is empty. It's prideful to think our ideas alone are enough." And this is true. But the mistake is thinking that AI separates the creative vision from the creator. My genuine question is, have you ever attempted using AI in the process of art? AI doesn't suck the creative vision from you and take over. It isn't sentient. AI is simply a catalyst, but it does not separate you from your creation. You are directing it, much like a conductor directs an orchestra. The conductor did not play the instruments, but he is attributed as an artist nonetheless. The creative process requires a person to originate and direct it, and this is exactly the case when you combine AI with traditional artistry. But the claim is that artists using AI are simply bypassing this process. But how are we defining the process? If the degree of strain one has during the creative process is what validates it, then what are we to do with the artist who barely strains their mind during the creation of a masterpiece?
The human brain can develop new creative ideas that don't exist in a specific realm because God can give you these new ideas that are much further than anything that we could ever imagine. AI will not replace you as a creative. AI will help shed more light on who you are as a creative.
Both sides of this discussion have people who genuinely love art and God. But whether you agree or disagree, the Apostle Paul emphasizes the freedom we have in Christ. One's conscience may revolt against eating food sacrificed to idols, while another may not. Neither is wrong, but by the grace of God, we can exercise personal freedom in a way that still maintains our artistic integrity. Let's discard the infantile insults that are pervasive on both sides. The way we navigate this is to listen, debate respectfully, and then come to a conclusion that resonates with your conscience. The truth is, we're all affected by this. It's unknown territory. But the problem is that if we lead with fear, our minds become clouded, which, if you're a Christian, is exactly what Satan wants. You are an artist because you are the author of your vision, and the process of creating art changes you into a new person. The tools you use do not negate the creative act. You are your own greatest inspiration or bottleneck.
For the people who use AI, on their side, it's like, oh, you guys are just whiny, you're just crying about it, suck it up and just deal with it. And then on the artist side, artists are like, we need to snuff this thing out, we need to kill this AI thing, this shouldn't even exist. It's like, okay, well, you're not looking at the benefits that it could bring to millions of people in the future.
Now, I will put a caveat here. There is a danger of being lazy if we are not intentional, but I have hope that by having this tool in our toolkit, we can assist the process and create something that reaches an even farther impact for the kingdom than we could imagine. We create the art, not AI. We are the originators of the vision, not AI. You are the artist. AI is merely an instrument. If a devout Christian such as John Irwin can create an amazing TV series and use AI to do so, I'm excited to see what Christian creatives are able to do with this new technology. Stay creative. God bless.